Hello, and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. I know I've been sharing a lot of episodes recently. There's been loads of special occasions from the 80th episode to last week's two specials with Deborah and Aisha and Natalie. Natalie 2 weeks ago, yes, the 80th episode with Natalie. And then you had Deborah, and then you had Aisha. And this week is going to be again a two episode week. Yeah, this is the first episode that's going to drop this week, and it's with Harry. He's a comedian from London. We met at a comedy show a while back, and we ended up having some a good conversation about I think it was about comedy, and then we got to talk about like mental health a bit as well. Anyway, it was just a very enjoyable conversation. I think we kind of we were traveling back into London in the using the same train line. So yeah, we just ended up like sharing the journey, and it was a good chat. And then I thought, hey, you know what? Why don't we? Why don't I bring like Harry on so we can have a conversation that everyone can listen to, which is this. And yeah, look, you're up for a good episode. And anything else from me before I put on the no? Well, again, the 16th of April show. It's selling. I want to say fairly fast. There are tickets left, but we've sold more than I expected in the last week since we've put it out. So yeah, if you're based in London and you want to come, make sure you get your tickets. Yeah, as soon as you can, basically. And then what else? I think that's it. Yeah, because I still got a couple of weeks left. When I can't like talk about like my whole like old day job situation, but time's up on that soon, so I'll be able to share more information. And yeah, I think well, actually, one of the big-ish things that happened last weekend, I was watching some videos online, and I was watching one from the campaign against anti-Semitism. And it was about this like group of students at UCL who are terrorizing kids and faculty in general, but their main target is the Jewish ones. And then I've recognized someone that I used to work with back in the day, so I've basically reported that person, and I've reached out to CAA, and I've also filed a police report as well. So, look, all I'm saying is if you ever see some weird stuff on the internet, and if someone looks familiar, they might be. So keep an eye out, because you look, guys, when you're making the world a better place for everyone, that's very good. And people who are being unnecessarily aggressive and abusive, I'm pretty sure they knew what they signed up for. So yeah, they deserve what's coming to them. And that's it. I'll leave you on this. Enjoy the conversation. Enjoy listening to the interview that I had with Harry. And then, yeah, I'll catch you before we depart. Thank you. Okay. So, Harry, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going okay overall. Thanks, Levi. It's been I've just just settling into the new year overall, and yeah, things have been going okay. Nothing too much so far. Too bad.
Nice. So, because you're from London, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've always lived in London. My family weren't at all, but yeah, I've always personally.
South London, okay, yeah. South London. That's it. Yeah, because I was going to ask you like, what was the commute like, and the weather looks horrible.
Oh right, yeah, it's Yeah, earlier today it was not so bad actually in the last like couple of hours or so. So yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's been raining a bit less. So yeah.
That's good, yeah, because I think I went to like the gym in the morning a little bit, and then I got home, and then it was like work, 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 and but every time I was looking through the window, I was like, whoa, I was kind of like, I'm
Oh
glad,
yeah.
I'm glad I can do this from here,
Yeah.
but fair.
Yeah, it's real downpour.
And then because you're traveling, obviously you're traveling because just for context and for everyone listening, you can see it in a bio, but Harry is a fellow comedian. The fellow comedian, but he's also is he like an ex student of psychology? Is a I want to be like to say like in a fancier way, I guess. But it just sounds
Oh
weird.
no, that's fine. No, yeah, that's
But
yeah.
and did you go to uni in London as well?
I did, yes. I went to Roehampton University in southwest London.
Okay, yeah. Nice. That's what I was gonna say. But then you obviously you're like used to with traveling for gigs anyway,
Yeah,
regardless of the weather.
yeah. And I travelled in from home for that. Yeah, so yeah, that's right. Yeah, so yeah.
And because we were talking about earlier, when because you were saying you're from like, when are you from Southeast London, or sorry, from South London, or do you live now in South London?
I've I've always been in South London. Yeah, always
No way.
as well. Yeah.
And did you? Do you notice any like major differences? I guess from like what it's like now from when you were a kid.
It's interesting actually. Yeah. I'm not sure. I guess it's. I suppose yeah. Like I mean, the common theme is the high streets and the changes in the high streets. So yeah, that's a big thing. And yeah. I mean, a lot. I mean, I feel like a lot of the character. There is still, when I'm walking around to London, and I still see a lot of the character and all the like the buildings and the area is pretty much the same. But I suppose yeah, just shops and just think changes in businesses, and maybe in some ways busier as well. Sometimes with cars and traffic. Sometimes, but it feels sometimes, I think, in my neighborhood as well. I think maybe it's got a bit more popular as well. I think, but yeah, I'd say it's nothing too, I would say, drastic.
Okay, and then because you're talking about like the getting like busier, like more popular
Yeah.
these days, or like more recently. But then, oh my god, I lost my train of thought. Because then, obviously, I imagine like you went to school then as well in South London, and
Yeah.
you did all. Because I know like. Do you get annoyed about? Because I know, like, when I was looking, for example, for like a place to live in London, and I was looking at South London as well. I know that it's harder. I feel like, but again, as an outsider, it's harder to commute. Because I feel like there is not as much like underground, and then it's kind of like it's almost like there is a gap in the middle, or where there's only overground.
That's right, very much.
And stuff like this. So then, did you? I don't know. Have you noticed that as well? Like, I guess growing up, or like I guess like what's your idea actually on it? Like, what's your theory?
Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, it's lacking. It's mainly the yeah. We've got good bus services, but they're more. It's not towards London, and the trains are not as frequent, say, as a tube. So yeah, the nearest tube station's Morden. That's about 20-minute bus ride away. So that's the thing. Because in North London, I think.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You have like a tube, a train, so like a tube, an overground, and a bus station.
Yeah.
While like sometimes, because I know when I gig down south, or like even when I used to look on the map, it's kind of like, oh, you have to take a bus from the tube station to the venue to do a gig, because if you were to walk, it's going to take you like 35 minutes, an hour.
Yeah, that's right. And I think because I think they've been wanting to extend it, but it's just it never got through for some reason or another. And
I think that, again, like you said, the more busier it gets, the harder it is to have to like stop things so that you can build the said station. Because it's not like, oh, we're gonna do it like this overnight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
What made you want to do the like? How did you get into? Or what was it first? Was it first the psychology that you got into, or was it so basically like, was it first that you were like, oh, I want to study psychology,
Yeah.
or was it first, oh, I want to do comedy?
I think
What
actually,
was the thought that came first in your mind?
yeah, the way it panned out. Actually, I did the psychology way before I started the comedy, but my interest in comedy, I think, was before I studied psychology, because I only really got into psychology. I thought it sounded like an interesting subject in my last year of sixth form, and luckily because my school didn't have psychology as an option, but very luckily for me, they in my final year of sixth form they suddenly introduced it, so I just jumped onto it because at that point I was thinking I wanted to try out psychology in university, and my options were limited because they were wanting, say, like an A level psychology grade. So
right.
so luckily on my final year of school that came about because I think there might have been one university I could have gone to, like Kingston or somewhere, but yeah, it gave me a few more options once I got studying onto that, and then yeah, that led nicely into the degree, and that definitely helped in the first year having that year's experience as well. But yeah, I think, but a comedy, I'd say, yeah, at least 4 or 5 years before that, in my early mid teens, even I was kind of
No way.
yeah.
What was your So what was then? What was your introduction to comedy?
Um, I mean, partly my family as well. I think because they're always making jokes, and my dad also did a stand up course actually in the late.
No
90s.
way.
Yeah, the thing with him, he did it in the late 90s. He did the showcase, but he didn't get onto gigging. But he kind of says I think he kind of maybe wished that he had done some, but he could. I mean, there's still always time to go back.
How did you find out about that? Did your dad tell you when you were younger, or did your dad actually tell you after you started doing comedy yourself?
Yeah, when I was young, I think, and was so there was that side, and also just watching sitcoms, and I got into as well. Like when I was a child, I liked.
What kind of was it? The British humor that you were more? Well, like actually, you know what? Because again, a very you might find it as a weird question because again, I didn't grow up here. But then, was it British sitcoms or was it like actually Americans? Like what kind of stuff were you able to get on telly or even like online when we were looking up those things?
Yeah, I'd say pretty much British sitcoms. I think mainly. I think
right.
Yeah.
What was your, if you were to like make a, no, again, not a top necessarily like in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but what are the first 5 shows, I guess, that you'd say that shaped your love for comedy?
Yeah. They're kind of, I'm not sure they all fully come on the sitcoms, but like, yeah, comedy things that I used to watch. I liked 40 Towers. I watched also Father Ted, The Simpsons. I like
Simpsons, I know.
What other ones? There's probably will come to me in a bit, but those are definitely 3 of the main ones I found. And
I've never heard of what was the first one again?
40 Towers.
Fawlty Towers.
Yeah, that's a hotel one. It's kind of actually because it was based in the 70s. Some of the things they had back then wouldn't necessarily make the cut now. But I thought like within there was a lot of good as well in terms of the lines and just the situation based humor as well. I thought.
Okay. And then you were talking about, because do you have any siblings?
No, I'm an only child.
Only child, and then you were saying that your dad was like, "Oh, I used to I tried doing comedy, or like I did a workshop." Did he ever tell you how did that happen? Like, did he tell you like what was his train of thought on like doing a workshop about stand up or like in stand up comedy?
I'm not sure if it was partly because I think he just wanted to try it, and also partly, I'm not sure it was because of that, but he said from doing the course he felt that his public speaking improved. So I don't know if that was a part of the reason, just to get it out there and try and expand the skill set a bit more and be more confident as well. And that, because definitely for me, in fact, that was part of the reason for me as well. That I partly did that as well, and almost it was a confidence thing. But yes, I think maybe.
Oh, no way.
Thing.
Also, you actually did you did a stand up comedy course. You didn't, I guess, just like, oh, here's an open mic, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I was kind of tempted. I mean, because in South London, like you say, the transport, there's not much transport. It's the same with the comedy gigs. There aren't so many. So you often look around to see if there are any, but I couldn't really see any. So if there had been a chance, I probably would have started quite a bit earlier. But but I think in the way it probably worked out better because it gave me more preparation. In fact, I didn't go. First of all, I did a comedy improv course because I was kind of interested in improv, and I saw it's comedy and stuff. What that combines 2 things, and that's like a stepping stone. And then I did a few levels of that, and then I saw that it was on the Hoopla, which is in central London. They have courses, and then I saw that they also ran a stand-up course. So then I jumped on that, and I thought that's more in line of what I want to try out. And I did that, and then that's. In fact, to be honest, when I did the stand-up course, I was interested in it, but I didn't really see myself I thought maybe just as an occasional hobby doing it, but once I'd done did the showcase, I just wanted to continue, and then just since on I've continued from that.
Interesting. And then just before we talk about it, I want to go like in a bit like back in chronological order.
Oh yeah.
To when you were saying that you were like, I think GCSEs you said, like level
A level.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, but again,
Okay.
I'm confused with the educational system.
Oh yeah, they always change the names as well. Since I've been, I think
Okay.
as well they've changed
So
it again. And
I feel better.
yeah,
You were in A levels and you're like, hey, like psychology sounds interesting.
yeah.
Was it like, are your like folks, are your parents, or was that like out of nowhere? Like, how come, what drew you? Because you were saying like, oh, psychology sounds interesting,
Yeah.
but it's something that I would see myself doing, or like see myself studying or learning about. But then how did that thought, do you remember how that thought first came in the first place?
I think because some of my friends, I think, had studied it, and I thought it sounded like an interesting subject. And I'd particularly say, I think like I'm always interested in, say, I think like social psychology in particular is something that interests me. So I'd say that was the particular area I was drawn to, and I just
No
thought
way,
it sounded
from
like
that
an
age.
interesting. Probably about maybe mid-teens, I'd say. Yeah,
Really?
and, maybe just before maybe 1 year or 2 years before I started studying at A level, I kind of thought that might be a subject to try out. And
Interesting. How come? Because it's like it's a very grounded thing to do,
yeah.
or like to be interested about as a 15-year-old kid.
I think partly, I'm not sure, it's partly from experiences as well. I think like because like I feel like because psychology covers like the like interactions and different aspects, and I feel like that's something. And like with me as well, like because I'm for me, I'm autistic, so like that's
Right.
so I feel like in social interactions, that's kind of something that's not been my top strength. I feel like, so I suppose it's just looking at the psychology and also just the mind as well, just the way the mind works and interesting things. And so I think it's interesting to delve into.
Did you did you get, like, when did you know that you were or like when did you get diagnosed of being autistic? Was it like again as a teenager, or like was it around that time, or was it the university, or was it after, or
No, I think I was about 5 or 6 years old. So,
no way?
yeah. So pretty much as far as it's always been as far as
Seriously?
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
How do you remember it? Like, well, yeah. What was like the whole experience? I'm so like curious
Oh, yeah.
because it's, again, especially like coming as a kid who was raised in Romania.
Yeah.
Again, at 5-year-old, I wouldn't know anything about it. I don't even think as a teenager, we wouldn't talk about, or like I wouldn't understand things as such. But yeah, what do you remember from the experiences, or like anything growing up that like stood out, or
Yeah, I think I mean, I'd say, I suppose, I feel like I like the social awkwardness, even though I'm a very social person, I enjoy it, but I just find like I'm not always that. I find it a struggle as well, but so that's always been in the back of my mind. I suppose it's been awareness, and in school as well, I'd have a helper as well, like a teaching assistant as well, just to help with in terms of, because I'm not sure if it's maybe a bit slow processing, just to make sure I got the concept, because I think with like sometimes with language as well, sometimes if the word has more different meanings or something like that, you can interpret it in different ways. So just making sure that I got the grasp fully of everything, and so I'd get, say, a bit of extra time as well in exams. And
interesting.
So there was always that awareness, but luckily, because I think I don't feel I was too segregated, because like you hear sometimes there's separate rooms or separate schools, but I was in a mainstream school, which I was pleased with, and it was just, that was the only thing I think pretty much that I had really in terms.
Oh yeah, because I wasn't like the question wasn't in any like remark or anything. I was just generally curious because I was like, oh, like how do you remember? I don't know, like even I guess getting, because do you have to like get tested or something like this, or were you like speaking with a doctor, or
for the initial diagnosis, I think it would have been a doctor. I think it would have been I think it would.
And then you just kind of like take it from there, like you were saying. That's pretty cool. I mean, that sounds like a very nice. What do you call it? It's a nice journey. Like it sounds like a good version of the journey. But then okay, so now we are again. You're going to So you're picking up psychology,
Yeah.
and then you were saying, you're interested about social. Wait, what was the word that you used? Because you said something about like, oh, you were very curious about like social. Was it social psychology?
Social
So
psychology.
psychology as a teenager, which is like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Because I think I was just like very interested about like the football results or whatever.
Oh,
was
right, yeah,
like
that as well.
TV,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then now you're going to uni. You're doing psychology, and then was it? Did you do the stand-up comedy course after university or during university, or because I know sometimes universities have those like arts
Yeah.
departments, that you can like I get, is that like a thing, right, where you can just like say, oh, if you like theater you can try and be a part of like the theater team or
Oh, right, yeah. So like
improv
after,
comedy and stuff like this.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, to have
Was that an
I don't think I had that as an option at my university. Yeah, I started stand up about quite a few about I think it was about 10 years after I graduated, so there was a gap. But the fun actually, funnily enough, in my final year of university, there was a one-off thing where one of the lecturers in my university did a just after class they just said they were just doing a psychology of comedy talk, so I just thought that's perfect. I'd be very interested in that, and so I came along to that, and that was probably one of the only times I've been busy taking notes just of every word. So because I just thought it's very interesting just to do that, because I had, even though it was like a way before I started, at that point I kind of had a thought, I was something I'm interested in, and
interesting. And okay, so you're saying because you graduated and then 10 years later you were like, oh, actually, well, again, around 10 years,
yeah,
I'm going to try and do this comedy course.
that's right. Yeah.
And then in the I guess like in the even in the time between, because you were talking about like, as a kid, you're interested in the comedy. And then was there actually either anyone from your class who was like also like dabbled, I guess, with comedy? Dabbled, is that the word? Like whether you know of
Okay. Yeah.
anyone who's tried doing stand up or any other kind of comedy.
Not that I'm aware of, actually. No, I don't. Yeah, from my circle of friends or from what I picked up for, unless it never really came up. I don't think, especially. And it
Okay.
wasn't heavily attended. I don't think like that. Like the comedy thing we did after class. I don't think that was. There was only less than 10 people there as well. So I don't think
okay.
it was. Not really.
And then when you, I guess, what was the most surprising thing that you've learned about or like you've studied when you were at uni doing like your psychology degree, like with some things like, or like the thing that like stood out to you the most, where like, oh wow, I actually would have not thought about this.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, like just how complex the mind is, I suppose, and like, I mean, I'm not. For me, like I'm not. Even though psychology is a science, I'm not really so much on the technical, scientific aspects. I'm more interested in the social and the more the theories. But no, but there was. I thought like when it was talking about the brain and just like how deep it went and the consciousness and the subconsciousness, and that was all quite just the way that the different levels of that I found was quite interesting to grasp. And I suppose, just because you don't, that's not something you're necessarily aware of, and just that was something. Even though it wasn't necessarily my favorite part of the degree, but that was, I suppose, something that you didn't necessarily. Just it was a new thing that to take into account.
And then because you're again you're an interested like again teenager, and now you're a student, and you're talking about you're interested in like social psychology, and then you start doing stand up now.
Yeah.
Have you ever saw yourself like any links between the two? Like, have you ever seen yourself? Oh, maybe like, do you actually feel like one had anything to do? So your decisions, I guess, of like, oh, I'm gonna study psychology, and then I'm gonna do stand up comedy.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed anything like intertwining?
I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, like psychology as a subject always interests me. So I think, like in my sets, I find that it does cover things like my own, like for example, mental health, and like I cover different. I'm interested in personalities, so maybe I try and maybe come through like different personality. I want to do more stuff maybe about different personalities and things, and just.
Oh no way! How
Or
if you
just
can go on the details,
yeah.
if you'd rather keep it as a secret, as like a work in progress, that's fine. But otherwise, please give me more details because I'm actually curious about this.
I'm not too sure, but it's just I'm not sure. I just like the idea of maybe just because there's so many, it's just like interesting, like there's interesting stuff related to character personalities and characters. I'm not sure like to incorporate more into my set.
And what do you always was the sorry because I want to like make sure I phrase it correct. Excuse me, but yeah, what do you always like? Did you had an idea of what you want to do as a comedian or like as a set, and have you like stuck with that ever since, or do you think like you've changed quite a bit? If do you understand what I'm saying, or do you want me to? Yeah, okay,
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, like how have you changed, or is it like kind of this is the sort of stuff that I saw myself doing, and that's exactly what you're doing now?
I think it's pretty much kind of. I don't feel like I've really changed too much from the beginning in terms. I maybe if anything, I try and do too much. So yeah, I do pretty much many 5 minute sets, and I feel like I do a mix of maybe observations or one liners and then a bit of politics. So if anything, sometimes I kind of find it hard. I don't have one niche necessarily. I kind of it's like an aggregate of all those things. And
Oh, okay.
maybe they overlap sometimes as well. Maybe
Okay, and then I guess that's like the sort of like idea of like the picture of you that you had of you in the future.
I think, yeah, I think that's, I suppose, that's, yeah, I feel like that's the kind of thing that I've always been into, I suppose, comedy wise. Yeah, because I suppose before I had, also before I did comedy, I've always been interested in writing comedy. So that's something I've done as well. So um, I've always been interested in humor for some um, way or another. So I did short stories and comedy, and so that that was something I always wanted to do, and stand up was always something that I was almost close to doing, but not quite. So that I suppose I always had the vision, and there is an overlap as well in terms of the stuff that I've written that's kind of inspired my sets as well. I'd say as well in the past. So I feel like if I see something in some of my short stories, and I feel like this could actually work in a stand up set, so there is some overlap there as well.
Okay, and then because I know you were talking as well about the fact that you were from the stand-up comedy course.
Yeah,
you were looking at a way, or like you were talking about like trying to improve. Just you said like a similarity with your what your dad said about like improving your like talk the skills of
I like the public speaking.
yes, public speaking skill. But then even before, have you ever like I guess even before you started doing the stand-up comedy course, and again that was like one of the things that you wanted to like dive into, I guess. But have you written anything beforehand, even like as a joke, as a sketch, as an idea, as a whatever?
Yeah, I think actually, probably at least a few years before I started, I had like a document with notes and potential lines I could use. So
No
it was just
way.
all sorts of different things. So I was thinking, if one day I do this, that those would be the kind of things I'd do. So some of the stuff I do in my set today, I think might have been written like quite a while ago, but then I just found a way to try and incorporate it into the set.
And you were mentioning something about like the way you do your stand up now. It's also addressing your mental health.
Yeah.
At time, like again, at times addressing your mental health. Was it also like were you journaling in general? I guess, or like how have you again like yeah how did you like I guess keep a track of I guess that journey of like the journey of your mental health, or is it actually something that only started because of stand up comedy?
I suppose because I've in the past when I've had maybe some maybe issues, I found like there was like just seeing the humor from it and just picking up things. So there was a routine because like specifically I've had panic attacks, and that's something that's been quite regular. So
No way.
there was just something that would I came up with a routine around that because they're quite something I've had when I quite a bit. So I just thought there was just looking at a different angle and just coming. I thought there were some things that might work in a set. So that was one thing I thought was I could do a longer routine around.
If you don't mind me asking, when did you start having or when did you, when did you start having the panic attacks, as far as you remember?
I remember. Yeah, I think my first one actually was very clear. Actually, I was about 14 or 15, I'd say,
No
and
way.
because I suppose, yeah, it's like I can be a bit of an anxious person, but I think, yeah, that was when it was like all the symptoms built up, and it's like I noticed, like, especially like I mean, they can be centered around different things. Sometimes it can be more to do with nausea, but in particular, my first one was more to do with like the breathing and, just thinking like you
Yeah.
can't breathe. And so
Yeah.
it was just, and it feels very real as well. So it's like simulate
Yeah.
almost. And
I mean, I'm asking because I've also struggled with that, and I had.
oh, you have?
But that's why I was just curious, because I think, again, I feel like as a teenager it was quite hard to tell what it was.
Yeah.
I think the first time, again, I think the first one that I've spoken with someone, and like with as in like a doctor, and they're like, oh, it could be a panic attack.
Oh,
It
right.
was, I think, when I was maybe like, I'll say 15 or 16. But the first time when I remember like having feeling like I like, like I can't breathe anymore, or like I'm being it was probably when I was like 13.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Very,
And
very
that's why I'm
young.
like, okay, I was quite curious.
Yeah.
And then what did you have you told anyone about it at the time?
No, actually, yeah, that's the thing, because I think that was something I kept. I didn't really keep. I mean, weirdly enough, I did, because at the time it was quite prevalent. I missed about a month, maybe 2 months of sick form at a time, but um, because, but yeah, it was almost like a comfort zone. Like you're only with the panic attacks, there's only certain places you're limited to going, and at that point in those few months, it felt like there was only a smaller area I felt comfortable in. So went into yourself a bit more. So that, yeah, so I missed a couple of months of school, but despite that, I don't think I really addressed it. And it's weird at that time as well. Those times when I was going through the panic attacks, that even talking about it during those times, if I that would almost trigger the panic as well. Me talking, I'm not sure if it's like at the time.
Which makes sense, because I feel even now I feel like it was something that, even me thinking about like asking you, I was like, oh, you, because it's always like you said, it's something that, because again, it's a triggering event itself, but it can also be a trigger,
Yeah.
in the future. So yeah, I guess that makes again, like what you're saying, makes a lot of sense. Basically, like to me, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And because so is it something that you're, I guess, because you were talking about like how you do you have like a stand-up routine, or like
Yeah.
you wrote about it now, but is it also something that you've struggled with in more recent years, or is it something that happened mostly, I guess, in your teens, and then not since?
I'd say it's strange because it comes in bursts. Like there was a period about a year or two in my teens where I got them. And then during my university years, weirdly enough, because I thought that would be a prime time where I'd get panic attacks with it being a new situation and
Yeah.
getting out of the comfort zone of the school I'd been at for 7, 8 years and going into a new situation. But funny enough, I didn't struggle with then. But about 3 or 4 years after I left university, again, they came back. And it was a bit weird as well, because I found like it was almost, they came in a different form as well. Like the ways I would dealt with the panic attacks maybe the first time around, they weren't necessarily as effective with the new wave of panic attacks that I got. So I found that it was, but that was a bit, that made it a bit scarier as well, because it found like it was, coming in a different angle. But then eventually I managed to get some techniques, and then I'd say that was the second time, and then but maybe the last time was about 4 or 5 years ago. But actually, because the first two waves, I'd say it was about a year where I struggled to get out of it. The last time, about 5 years ago, I think it was only about 1 or 2 months, which felt much. Yeah, it was much. I thought it was much significantly shorter, and so it still sounds like a long time. But I was quite pleased because I felt like that time I managed to deal with them much quicker. And so hopefully, I mean, yeah, I'm aware that they could always come back at some point or another, and occasionally I'll get like a one-off panic attack on an occasional situation. Actually, sorry, yeah. There's when I started out stand-up comedy. Funnily enough, I was slightly, sometimes before I went on stage, there was always that risk of possibly having a panic attack. In some of the earlier shows, that I remember one show in central London when I was. Sometimes you don't know the running order, and I wasn't sure whether I was on the first or the second half. But in the first half, I was kind of in that mode of I could be on stage at any time, but I was effectively having a panic attack in the audience. Like I felt like the breathing, and then like my fists closing in and, just a shakiness. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, if I go on stage now, what it'd be like. But luckily I was on in the second half. And by that time, once it got to the second half, I was fine. And for me as well, and I'm not sure if it's common, but like once I've had like the panic attack, and once that's out the way, I feel much more relaxed. And it's almost like once I've got that out the way, I'm a more extrovert slightly, and it's like it's such a relief. I can function again.
It makes sense because I see. Well, it's not to say that it has to, but it's just like I get it. Yeah, because it's kind of like, oh, at least it's like it's out of the way now.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you built as much tension as you possibly can.
Yeah,
And now there is no more tension. I think it. If I say from personal experience, like
Yeah.
it almost it is. Oh, there's no more tension left to build.
yeah,
It's
that's
like
true.
whatever. But you were talking about the fact that you're talking about like techniques. You mentioned the word techniques when you were like of like dealing
Oh
with
yes,
the
yeah.
panic attack. How did you get? I guess did you do like your own research on those like techniques, or is it actually because did you speak with like a professional in the meantime and that's how you got the help? Like, yeah, how did you get the to learn, I guess, these techniques? Was it like self-taught, or was it something that you've addressed?
Yeah, it was more the professional, and you joined the first wave of panic attacks because I saw a doctor, but I ended up seeing different people. Like I think it was like I was trying out looking at a homeopath, and I think the psychologist. So it was different people I was talking to. But I think the doctor was the one. I think they gave me some effective tablets which helped manage in terms of the symptoms. But then, but as I say, yeah, with the second wave of panic attacks, that didn't necessarily work. So I found the thing I tried out was I think like having ginger tablets helped with the nauseous side of things. So that
No
was the
way.
thing I tried out, and that helped. That seemed to be the thing that was effective for me that time. And so it's just almost sometimes in this period I found different ways that helped during that period.
Interesting. And then now we're I wanted to ask you about the stand-up comedy, because
Yeah.
obviously like that's naturally, like I feel like that like creates like such an anxiety. I think I don't know what it's like for you, but I know that before I go on stage I always get anxious, and then I noticed that in some kind of shows I get more anxious than other, and but then I'm like, again, the whole experience is actually something that can be very, again, like a huge trigger, for like such a thing as a panic attack.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you consider that as a did you consider that as a possible what's the word? Yeah, did you consider that would be like a possibility when I guess you signed up for the stand-up course, or even when you've done the stand-up comedy course and you're like, oh, actually I like again, like I said, you like the showcase and you're like, oh, I want to keep doing this?
Yeah.
Or did you actually manage for the beginning to not even think about it?
About in terms of the
Like
anxiety.
whether there was a version of you, or like there was a thought in your head that, oh, I have to be careful because there might, a panic attack
Yeah.
might arise from this, or was it something that you were just kind of like doing without thinking, and then eventually?
Yeah, no, I feel like because I felt with the 8-week course as well, I think that was good because it was a gradual exposure. So it was initially you just performed short sets of 2 minutes each week in front of your course mates, and then that helped gradually ease you into the showcase. And then the showcase was a friendly one, so it's just families and friends, so that was very friendly. So I felt like that helped ease me into it. And I think, I might have go back to the initial anxiety in the past. I think that was possibly another factor why I started comedy maybe slightly later than I could have done. Maybe that was also holding me back a bit when I was going through the worst phases. But also, I think the weird thing as well, actually, in the showcase, I remember I was, because like you say at the beginning, that's the worst bit I feel, and unfortunately, like my first line was a one-liner, so when I came on stage, I was quite so nervous that my voice like croaked, so that during the punchline of the one-liner. But luckily, the audience did manage to hear it and it was sympathetic. But it was just like that was like the worst time, because it wasn't like a story lead up or anything. It was straight bang into it, and it's like the what time
You're like, oh, I knew it.
yeah. But the thing as well, like going to like going on to just before you go on to stage, yeah, I find the same that that's the thing that's the worst time. And for me, I have it almost like each time, even to the gigs today, I have a mantra because like my improv teacher, and I've seen it elsewhere said, but my improv teacher said that I think that the feelings of excitement are quite similar to the feelings of nervousness. So I almost remind my brain that just, you know, in the like before I go on stage. So like, you know, if I get these feelings that might feel nervous or like nausea or nervousness or something, you know, that's actually excitement. That's, you know,
because you're going
like
about to go on stage.
Yeah, and there is also the excitement as well, I find. And once you started, I find usually, you know, I find it's just the first half minute or few seconds.
And you're talking about now about how, because you're saying the improv teacher told you about this thing of you know, nervousness and excitement have, like, I guess I want to say, is this symptoms or like similar ways of showing themselves?
Yeah, you know, the sensations of
sensations. Yeah. But was mental health a part of the course when you did stand-up comedy, like, or was that addressed by any means, like during the course, where they're like, oh, this is how you might feel, or, you know, I guess I'm thinking about, like, was there any sort of like tips on, like, you know, what to do before a gig, but also how to manage your emotions, I guess, after a gig? Because obviously, you know, I had more bad gigs than good gigs. And then I was wondering whether someone actually went through, I don't know, giving the heads up or like making a list of like, oh, these are the things of like how you look after yourself after a not so good gig.
I don't remember that being addressed so much, actually. Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember too much being covered necessarily around the emotional side, or there probably, I'm sure there must have been something that comes to mind, actually. Yeah, I remember it's more in terms of the joke writing and everything, but yeah, I don't really remember too much that was covered on that side of things.
But then how come, like how did you get to have that conversation with the obviously, although it's a different course, a different thing, because one was a stand-up, the other one was improv, but then the fact that your improv teacher gave you this tip or like this reminder of the sensations, the you know, the fact that they are like being like nervous and excited have similar but then is that because you've, I guess, asked something in particular, or was it actually like a part of a teaching class, or like a part of a lesson?
Can't remember the context that came out of, actually, but yeah, I think it was just during the lesson they just came up with that, and and it stuck with me as well, because I just thought, it's very useful, and and it's helped definitely, and because it's like the mindset as well, and just the almost psychologically just dealing with those feelings almost, and like not treating it, not making them exasperating them and making them worse almost, and just thinking that actually, this is like, you know, turning it into a positive thing almost in that moment.
And you know, because you were you seem like a very well thought, but was, because I don't know if that's the right word, but again, you seem like a person who's like, you know, like you enjoy, again, like the studying idea and the thinking about stuff, like things, because you did a stand-up comedy course, and then obviously you mentioned the improv. Is that the improv, that obviously something I imagine by the sounds of it is something that you picked up after you've done the stand-up comedy course?
I did that first, and I think definitely that helped as well.
Wait, you did the improv first?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
So I did about 2 or 3 levels of the improv, and then I did the 3rd level of improv at the same time as the stand-up course. Yeah.
And then my question, or the reason why I made the observation about like you is because I was going to ask, did you find the fact that, like, did you find that, you know, going into, I guess, studying about it gave you like more ease, more peace, you know, like going into, because I imagine, and again, from the experience I have with other people who I've never done improv, I know of other people who just like show up to, you know, like improv for like beginners, and then that's it. And then also like with comedy shows, from personal experience as well, you just show up at a open mic, you put your name down, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right.
But yet, you know, I know of many other people who are like, oh, actually, I'd rather have an introduction to this by someone who has more experience. So I guess, is that something that you do as, I guess, in general, or did it just happen with like comedy?
Well, in terms of just
in terms of like, like, do you say before you want to try something, or when you're like curious about something,
yeah,
to seek, I guess, the input of a professional?
yeah. Um, Yeah, I suppose that was definitely because I suppose that it gives you a little more confidence as well. Confidence, I think, having that
Interesting.
first, I think, and I felt like you needed, more almost kind of guide of a guide, I think, and knowing what you're getting yourself into almost. And
Have you found yourself questioning the I guess the authority, like questioning the, say, like you do stand up and you're like, oh, actually I would do this in a different way, or like challenging the things that you've learned?
um, I haven't, I don't think I have had that so far. Um, no, I don't think I've experienced that. Yeah.
Okay, and it's the same with improv as well. You were kind of like, okay, cool, that's like this is what I'm being taught. Fine.
Yeah, I think pretty much. Yeah, it seemed to it seemed to work out well. I think. Yeah, I felt like it was because it seemed to be. I enjoyed the course. Yeah, I felt. Yeah, there wasn't. I didn't feel there was too much that I found that I would. Yeah, challenge.
And actually, this is another thing that I want to. I'm curious to ask is about the, because you're talking about like being having been like that, or like having autism,
Yeah.
and then doing stand up comedy. Have you, like, how do you, what's your, I guess, even like train of or thought, or like how do you, when you're on stage, and I guess even as well as, I guess that this is a question for Harry, because he's also like, having autism, but also having had suffered of like panic attacks. Now you're on stage, you're doing stand up comedy. How can you, or like how do you monitor the situation in the room, or like even, I guess, what's your like, when your train of thought when you're writing something, how do you, because basically my question is, just to give you an example from like my, I guess, like personal,
Yeah.
is that like my train of thought is I'm writing something and then this is the punchline and here is the laugh. So then now it's you writing and here is the punchline, and then in the occasions where, oh, actually there is no laugh, or
Oh
like
yeah.
what's going
Yeah.
on, how do you manage that, or like how do you even preempt that, or like, yeah.
Yeah, I like to think because I think pretty much most of my lines all at one point or another, even like what I think are some of my if the lines I feel that go better most of the time at some point or another they've gone flat. So I'm not sure if it's interesting because it could be, I'm not sure if it's the delivery or just or the top, because I often switch my set. I put it maybe lines in different places, so I don't know. There's could be different factors, but I feel like and there's different, and also like I feel like if it's the context of the night as well, in terms of like if you feel the audience isn't responding across the night of different comedians, I feel that I almost like when I get onto stage, I expect I'm fine with with that to almost and accept it in a way, but there's sometimes I mean like some nights, but then you do get these times when sometimes your set definitely you've bombed yourself and when others haven't. And so but I definitely that's always I'm always I like to think I'm in a way sometimes I find this experience has made you stronger as well, in a way I found as well with
Yeah, but also it's something that you mentioned just now. I was going to ask you about the um how do you feel comfortable, like do you prepare yourself way in advance, or like even like before the gig, at the start of the gig, or doing the gig, when, or are you comfortable with just changing things last minute, or like just going with the flow?
I find I try to have a rough I pretty much always have a fairly set routine. I mean sometimes in the moment I might say, oh, I'll do this line instead, but I've always got lines in reserves. I'll say, if I don't do
Interesting.
this, I'll just do this thing instead. So that's kind of, I feel comfortable enough to feel that I can chuck in that as well. And I suppose in the improv side, that I suppose that helps because you feel like you're more relaxed. You
Yeah.
don't have to do a set structure necessarily. I mean, and maybe almost sometimes in the room, the delivery might, something as small as the delivery of the joke might be slightly different as well, something like that, or the wording or.
Do you find a difference between you and like your train of thought and the way you do things outside of comedy to how you do it in comedy?
I'm not sure. I think I I suppose I not overly. I suppose yeah. In comedy, I suppose I'm um. It's maybe it's I suppose because I've got a set kind of an idea of what I'm going to do. So I suppose there's more confidence in terms of doing that. I feel, but and maybe, but I'd say yeah, because I don't. I find in my comedy, I mean, even though I do have the slight room for going off structure slightly, I feel like there's not too much of that. So I suppose, yeah, I suppose it's. I wouldn't say, yeah, there's not huge difference. I'd say too much, yeah, from other areas of life.
So do you okay? Because then you feel like you're more. I guess you're comfortable with change regardless
Yeah,
to an extent.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, more so, I'd say,
And
yeah.
and then because have you not or like what did you notice? Because you were talking about like how before one of the reasons why you decided to do the stand up comedy was because of the public speaking.
Yeah.
Have you actually noticed any improvement or like not even improvement, like any changes between your public speaking or like the way you treat, I guess, even like social situations before doing stand up to how you treat it now?
Yeah, I'd say definitely it's made you feel more confident to just being able to be in your own voice almost and just being able to um I feel like because yeah, I suppose in the past maybe I was quieter. I feel like with comedy, I feel like it's like a it gives me an opportunity to use my voice a bit louder maybe, and that you get that becomes more of a habit the more you do it as well almost. So I'd say yeah, in terms of using the voice and being comfortable, I feel it's but yeah, I suppose on the because I don't on the social interaction side of things, because I don't really do too much in terms of I don't really do get any crowd interaction at the moment. That's still something that's I want to do at some point, but that's yeah, definitely that's I suppose
So it's
that
actually something that you would consider as like a part of your set, doing
I
some like crowd work.
I'd like to. I've only done a tiny bit so far, but it was kind of leading into a punchline, so it's not proper crowd work in terms of having no idea of what's because you kind of have like a hope for outcome it's leading towards. I haven't been confident enough to do that. I feel so I suppose that's held me back in terms of feeling the confidence. So that's the next stage, hopefully, to build towards at some point.
Interesting. And I was going to ask you about how because you were talking about like when you do like stand up, you're talking about like your own experiences.
Yeah,
You do like observations,
yeah.
and you also like address. You also do like political stuff. If you feel like there is anything that needs addressing, do you feel like stand up is become your outlet of like expressing those feelings, or did you actually notice that you can actually express yourself even outside of stand up
Yeah.
as a part of like again like of your experience of like trying it and doing it in the first place?
Or in terms of the politics, or
Yeah, I mean again because that was because it's like it's a I guess like it's a big topic,
yeah, that's
but
right.
it was
Definitely, yeah,
more to say that do you find yourself that say if you're like vocal
yeah.
about something and you're like again something like personal has happened to you or something that's again impacted you, do you feel like you have the same confidence or like the same energy to address something even on a non stand up stage, or
Um,
even just like in the case of like I don't know, say you don't agree with your like I don't know weekly newsletter from your say from your like I don't know, for example, I get like my synagogue newsletter every week,
oh, right,
and
yeah,
I'm like, oh, actually I don't agree with this, I
yeah.
might bring it up.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
Or do you actually just feel like, oh, I'm actually just you're just basically you're using the opportunity to
Oh,
bring something up and to talk about like your feeling on certain situations only on stand up?
yeah, no, I'd say, yeah, I'd struggle outside of stand up, outside in, yeah, other situations of life that'd be more difficult, I feel like, to openly do it. So I do like, because I do have an interest in politics, so I do have a like I help with a local political party, so that also is an outlet. I feel like where you're more comfortable with discussing politics or different situations. But yeah, stand up is definitely like also a place where I feel like you want to address current situations and like use humor and use try and almost like just show the get almost it's almost not like activism, but like showing certain viewpoints and why you feel it's important to address, but like in a humorous way. But it's kind of getting it out there almost and having that awareness. Because that's part of I like to. I consider myself like to be vocal on certain things. I think it's a good outlet to do that as well.
And then when did you? How did you start doing this? Because you were talking about like being, helping out like in your local like political area.
Yeah.
In your local area, you're like the political party that you support. But then, was that like a thing that you've always saw yourself doing, or is it actually something? Because I guess that isn't. It's a form of activism, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's a form of, I guess doing something. I think that's activism. But yeah, is that? Have you always saw yourself doing this, or is it something that you've developed more recently?
I'd say I developed because I didn't used to necessarily be interested. I didn't really follow politics until I was maybe late around university, I'd say. But I'd say so since then, I'd say it's become more of a bigger thing, and then that's getting involved in that way. So I feel like it's almost like overlapping in some ways as well, and it's when like getting I like to do the bit of helping with the politics outside, but also including that in the comedy side of things as well. And so
does your I guess if you were what are the most important things that you're like the things that like you care about most, the things that say, I don't know, if you'd be now empowered to like pick 3 things or like 5 things or even one thing that's most important to you, what is it that, or what do you feel like it was your like main drive to start again like being more vocal on the political scene?
Definitely like rights, like everyone getting like equal rights and things, so like different disadvantaged groups and things as well, like because also like I'm gay as well, so that's like another aspect of like being a gay and autistic, and I feel like I belong to quite a few minority groups, so that's definitely like a big thing. Like getting different equal rights and equal and across all groups, not just those, but like race,
of course,
everything. And also I suppose like with money as well as another thing, like 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 especially now with the huge gap between the wealthy and especially nowadays with the top billionaires and the owners of the big companies, and so I'm very much like in terms of just in terms of having more fairness, and so this you see it feels like there's a bigger gap, and also just caring I suppose just having a community as well, like a community feel just a fairer society, and so progressive. I'd say anything progressive, really, left progressive things, and definitely I have a passion for. So those are the top priorities, I think, and even climate change as well. That's a big thing as well. Even I'm not really too on the technical aspect, but that's obviously that's a big thing as well.
Okay, and then because you were saying that was like around the university days when you started getting a bit more of a sense of like what you care about and like what you want to, right? Because that's interesting. And then because I know you're talking about like the minorities or like the fact, like, if you don't mind me asking, like when did you I guess like I guess is that because I don't know, and I'm sorry if it's the wrong type of like wording or anything, but like when did you come out, like when did you find out, or like when did you figure that you're like gay?
It's quite interesting actually. It's weird because looking back, I suppose there's always that awareness that I felt like that I maybe was, but I didn't necessarily identify, and almost I suppose it's just the understanding, and maybe at first you think maybe you're bi or something, and then over the years you kind of realize that you're just like one way, but you're so I suppose in terms of having that awareness, and then maybe I always had the awareness, but I suppose maybe I didn't really label it until like mid-teens or something, and then that was when I felt officially that was
interesting
the way, and then just but in terms of and like in terms of sharing it with others as well, I found that so it's like that's there's different stages. I find definitely.
Interesting, but that's like again the thing when because it was more of a question of like when did you were like, oh, actually interesting, like this I feel different, from the I guess the what's the word is like the what's the this I don't want to say standard because again I know it's not, but is the sort of like, oh, because again like you grow up in a society where it's like is not addressed, right? And then you're like one day you're like, huh, there is something different here. Something, so that's why that was more of the curiosity. So interesting, because then you're saying obviously you got as a like you've got or like you knew you were autistic ever like since you were very young, like 4 or 5, and you're like teens. You're like, oh, okay, this again like you understand your sexuality better. Is that yeah. Okay, and then that's quite interesting. When you're talking about the university because it's again as my understanding from especially from talking because we talked a couple of times like actually once I think in the past after we met, but because it sounds like you were always like you're a curious person, and you're talking about like how you had like this thing of like, oh, I'm curious about like, again like psychology, and I'm curious about like how I guess things work this extent, and then at university is also quite interesting to. And I wanted to ask you before we wrap it up, like how come, because at university, I guess like normally that's actually the time when you're like, oh, actually, I only have a couple of years of me not having to care or like not as much. But yet it sounds like when you were at university, that's when you shaped this version of you where like, hey, what do I care about? Where is it that I want to make an impact or like a bigger impact? Or what is it that I care about more? How did that happen? Or like, if you from as far as you remember, or like as far as you remember this journey, like how did that happen when you were at university? Because again, at university, I think when I was like university age, it was all very different circumstances. I'd probably be like, I don't want to think about anything, but what's up, like what's happening with me tomorrow.
Oh, I see. It's weird. I'm not sure why. It was kind of. I'm not sure because I was maybe for some reason I don't know. Maybe I was just a bit aware of the news more, and I suppose also the interesting thing when I was at university the first year I was at university, there was the big thing about the tuition fees where they increased there was a coalition government,
right.
parties, the Tories and the Lib Dems, and they introduced there was a they increased the student fees. So I suppose that was quite a big thing that for students. I mean, I'm not sure that was partly because that was a thing that was a direct impact as well, and that so maybe that was a link in terms of that. But also, I don't know. I think just being aware and just I suppose at that point as well is when it changed from Labour to Conservative, and so maybe at that point I kind of that was when I was at university in 2010.
You mean the government?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
The Prime Minister became Conservative for I think pretty much the first time in my life. So at that point, maybe I was kind of feeling like I want more change to that, I suppose. Because I mean, the Lib Dems are who were there in coalition. They were fine. So I felt like when I went into coalition with the Tories, that was the time when I felt they damaged the party. But they've overcome that since. But I feel like that was a time, I suppose, when the Tories came in, and for me, because I'm more to the left. I feel like that was the impact, and I suppose that maybe drove more like seeing I want to see change almost. So I suppose that was a time when there was a change of government, and so I suppose it's just doing little bits even just to help locally. And
this is very interesting for me because I feel like as a Romanian also like the idea of like politics it's really different, like the whole the way like the way the government works. I don't want to say in your country, but it's actually I'm proud to say it's my country a little bit as well, because I'm a citizen.
Very much,
but it's still, I'm like, oh my god, this is so interesting because again, like I remember certain things from like growing up and like the way even now I guess like politics work, and although I'm not necessarily I feel like I used to be very vocal, and then I got now to a point where I'm like, actually, I'm a bit like, I don't, because it makes me very sad.
Oh,
like, I feel like I've even I want to say maybe like maybe like 5 months ago.
Yeah.
I stopped watching the news.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
I only
I
do
don't blame you.
because I feel like I'm only doing what do you call it? I watch like sports stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's it. Like anything else,
As long as your
I
team's
feel
doing well as well.
yeah. But even if it doesn't, like,
Yeah.
because I'm not the. I feel like when you had enough hardship, the fact that your team is losing is not like it's sad, but I'm not gonna it's
Yeah,
not gonna change my day.
that's true. Yeah.
So I'm covered on that respect. But then on the other one, I was just like, oh God, this is too much, and I just want to stop. And then I kind of got, what, if something is worth, if there is like something happens that's worth mentioning, you'll hear about it. Like n- I have to hear about it. It will pop in my face, but I don't want to actively look for this. But anyway, the reason why
No.
I say this is because. Excuse me, because now, like, after I listening to you and I'm going like, oh, it just made me realize that this was another thing that I found, like, especially from watching the news, I guess, and like trying to be like a good grown up, But then I'm like, I don't understand any of this,
Yeah.
and like I feel like I feel like there is so much catching up to do, because at least to me, I feel it was always like you hear about things that like Winston Churchill did in the second after the Second World War around that time, and then you hear about like what happened after Tony Blair.
Oh, yeah.
But then but still there. Like I only know Tony Blair from like because it was Labour, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think so. Yeah, that's all I know from that period of time. And then I know like David Cameron came, and then was it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, you see again, it proves my point that I'm so confused about the deaths and it's quite interesting because again and it makes sense because I feel like it just makes a lot of sense from what you were saying about like, hey, look, you're a student, you want again like you said, it's something like personal because the tuition fees are ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
much, yeah.
Um,
I still haven't really paid mine back as well because I think there's a time where it's written off if you don't. But
I don't think again. I genuinely, and this is such an off-topic thing but how are you again? Unless you're like a wildly successful
Yeah.
person, because it's almost like like the university, whoever gives the university the student loans. Although I'm studying now, but I'm like, it feels like they're almost like playing the lottery, because they give like all these tickets,
Yeah.
but then 95% of them are going to have to be written off at a certain point.
Yeah.
Because there's only like 5% that are actually going to, be successful enough financially to pay back.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, absolutely, yeah, that's
And I just
true.
thought about it now, and I'm like, whoa, this is again because you're like, hey, stop gambling, and I'm like, but so does the government.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, oh, we kind of believe in you, but we also believe in the other 100,000 students who have signed up for these loans, and then we'll see whoever pays it first. But anyway, Harry, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
I was going to ask if there's anything you want to basically like is anything else that you wanted to mention from earlier, because I wasn't sure if I cut you by accident
Oh, no, not at
last
all.
time. Okay, right, yeah, because cool. But yeah, thank you. And then the last thing that I usually like ask the guests is let anyone who's listening to this know where you're most active, like social media wise, what's your handle, although I will put it on the bio of the episode. And then also if there is anything to, I guess, look out for in the spring, let us know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose Instagram, I'm most active. My handle's hleg07, legs LEGGE. And that's where I sometimes show maybe short clips or upcoming gigs and things like that. And Facebook at hleg on there. And then and also I've got a couple of videos on YouTube. So yeah, just Harry Legge Comedians, and there's a couple of videos on that on YouTube as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Oh,
and yeah, good luck with everything, man.
Oh,
good luck.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
So, how was it? Was it good? Was it what you hoped for? Was it better? I hope it wasn't worse. But I'm pretty sure it was pretty good. Now, I've got a super busy week ahead of me. I'm actually, as I finish recording this, I'm about to go and get some work done. So I'm going to keep it pretty short because, again, you will actually hear from me again midweek with another special episode. And I promise this is the last time. Um, it's with Mike. I've the another member of the four musketeers or whatever, I want to say the fourth triangle, but it's actually there are only three corners in a triangle, or 3 points. But anyway, yeah, there is an episode with Mike coming on Thursday, and that's because we're gonna basically chat about chat with Mike because we haven't. I had Nick on and I had Karina on. I'm talking about the people that are a part of the four-way split bill on the 16th of April, called Progress at Aces and Eights. But yeah, I haven't had Mike on the podcast, and now it was time to make that happen. And I love speaking with Mike. I feel like we don't necessarily agree in many things, but it's just such an enjoyable conversation every time I speak with him, and it's just such a he's a wonderful person to talk to. But hey, look, I don't want to tell you any more about that. He's gonna have his own episode on Thursday. I just want you to basically check out the bio of this episode to get Harry's socials. And yeah, again, he's been a wonderful guest, and yeah, it's been a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. And I am looking at sorry, it's very distracting because I'm looking at Sarma and Pickle just running around, and it's quite funny, but again, it's quite distracting. However, from me, Pickle, and Sarma, until later on in the week, bye. Stay skillful. Talk soon.